What's up, guys? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Exaggerated, and if it's your first time stopping by, you are most definitely welcome. So on today's episode, I'm going to be sharing with you guys how I made this beautiful corset top with a square neckline and also exaggerated sleeves. This top has corset bonings also. That's why I call it a corset top. So guys, without further ado, let's just get right into the video. So these are the materials I'm going to be using for this top. This is a damask material. It is about 1.5 yard. This material is very soft and lightweight. Then I also got this lining for it. This lining is just a yard. So guys, we are going to be drafting this on a pattern paper before transferring to our main fabric. So this is the front pattern. The first thing I'm going to measure is my bust line, which is 10 inches. My under bust, which is 13 inches, the waistline, which is 16 inches, and also the full length of this top, which is 23 inches. I'm just going to go ahead to do the same thing at another point so I can get a straight horizontal line when I'm ruling this out. So you can see, guys, I'm just connecting these points together to give me my vital point. So now the next thing is to take my shoulder measurement. The shoulder is 14 divided by 2. I'm just going to mark 7 inches like that. Then I'm going to mark the neck wideness, which is 4 inches from the center of the pattern paper. Then I'm going to come down from my shoulder measurement by 1 inch for my shoulder slope, and I'm going to connect that to my neck width. So the next thing is to get my armhole. So from my bust line, I'll come up by 2 inches, and I'm going to connect that in a straight line to my shoulder slope that I marked earlier. So this is going to be my armhole. So I'm just going to extend this line here, and then I'm going to use my curve rule to also create my armhole curve. So now, guys, the next thing, I'll come to my bust line, and from there I'll come up by 3 inches. So on these 3 inches that I made, I'm going to measure my neck wideness, which is 4 inches that I also measured earlier, and I'm going to be connecting this to the neck wideness that is above like this in a straight manner. Then I'm going to extend this line back to the center of my pattern paper. So I'm just going to go ahead to label my points, my bust line, under bust, waist, and also hip line. So guys, the next thing to do is to mark my nipple to nipple measurement divided by 2 on all of these lines. So the nipple to nipple is 6 divided by 2. So guys, I just went ahead to mark 3 inches on all of these lines that I've created, and I'm going to connect everything in a straight line. I also extended that line to my neckline. So guys, I'm going to come to my under bust and take ½ inch on both sides of the nipple to nipple measurement. I'm going to do the same thing on the waistline and also on this neckline, ½ inch on both sides. So now, guys, I'm going to connect the darts on the under bust. I'll connect this to the waistline. Then from this waistline, I'm just going to connect this back to the hip line like so. This hip line doesn't have any darts taken, you can see. So guys, from my bust line, I'm going to come down by 1.5 inch. Then I'm going to connect this point to my under bust darts, and also I'll do the same thing to the other side. So I'll also connect this. You can see what I'm doing. I'm also going to connect this dart to my bust point like so. So guys, the only place I took that are the neckline, the under bust, and also the waist. So now, guys, the next thing I'm going to do is to take my bust measurement on this armhole line I have here. Then I'm going to be replacing back the dart from my neckline, which is 1 inch, and I'm going to add 1 inch seam allowance. Then the next thing, I'm going to come to my under bust and also take my under bust measurement. I'm going to replacing back this dart I took, and also 1 inch for sewing allowance. The dart I took is 1 inch. The same thing on the waist measurement. I'm going to replace back my dart, which is 1 inch, and also my 1 inch seam allowance. Then I'm going to connect these 3 points like so. So now, guys, the next thing I'm going to do is from the waistline, I'm going to come down by 3 inches, and on these 3 inches, guys, I'm going to measure my lower belly circumference divided by 4. So this is how you take your lower belly measurement. You can see this picture on the screen, and I'm just going to be adding 1 inch sewing allowance to that, and I'm going to be connecting these lines to the former lines I made earlier like so. On the hip line, I'm going to be taking my nipple to nipple measurement divided by 2 plus 1 inch. So that is 6 divided by 2, that is 3, so plus 1.5. So on this hip line I measured 4.5 inches, and I'm going to be connecting this in a square like manner like so. So guys, this is it. We are done with the front pattern. I'm just going to go ahead now to cut this out. So guys, you want to be really careful when you're cutting this neckline area. You want to make sure you are cutting out just the dart and not your measurement. So guys, this is it. You can see for this front I have just 2 pieces. So I'm going to label this now. This is the center front. You are going to cut this on fold, and I'm also going to label the other piece, which is the side front. So now guys, to cut the back pattern is just like the same thing with the front, but with a little difference. So this back pattern, the same thing. I'm going to label, I'm going to mark my bust line 10 inches, under bust 13 inches, my waistline 16 inches, and the full length of the back side, which is going to be 18 inches. You know, it's just 2 inches below my waistline. So guys, I'm just going to extend these lines and also label this. So now guys, I'm going to take my shoulder measurement, come down by 1 inch for my shoulder slope, and also take my neck wideness, which is 4 inches. Your neck wideness for the front and back should be the same thing. So I'm just going to connect this, and from my bust line I'm going to come up by 2 inches and connect that to my shoulder line. This is going to be my armhole. So guys, the armhole for the back is not going to be as shallow or as deep as the front. So this is how it's just going to look like, the armhole for the back. So now guys, from my bust line I'm going to come up by 2 inches, and on this line, you know, this is my chest line, I'm going to measure 4 inch, which is my neck wideness, and I'm going to connect this back to the neckline above. So guys, on this line here that I just made, I'm going to measure my nipple to nipple measurement divided by 2, that is 6 divided by 2 is 3 inches. I'm just going to measure these 3 inches on all my horizontal lines, you can see, and I'm going to connect them in a straight manner like so. So guys, on this chest line here, on the neckline, I'm going to measure ½ inch on both sides of the nipple to nipple measurement. I'm going to do the same thing on the other bust and also the waist, ½ inch on both sides, and I'm going to be connecting this dart in this manner, and I'm going to also connect this to my bust line like so. And also you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to connect this to my neckline also. Then I'm going to extend this line back to the full length of my top. So guys, don't forget the back length of your back is different from that of the front. So now guys, I'm going to come to my chest line and take my bust measurement divided by 4. I'm going to add back my dart and also 1 inch for sewing allowance. The same thing for the under bust. I'm going to take my round under bust and I'm going to add back the dart 1 inch and also sewing allowance. The same thing for the waist. I'll take my waist measurement, add back my dart and sewing allowance. Now I'm going to connect all these points I made like this with my straight ruler, and I'm just going to be using my curve rule for this edge, you know, just so as to avoid a sharp edge. So now guys, I'm done with the back pattern. I'm just going to cut this out carefully, and I'm going to also cut out my darts like so. So now guys, for the back I also have 2 pieces. I'm just going to label this. This is the center back and also this is the side back. So now guys, it is time to cut out my pieces on my main fabric. So guys, when cutting out, I'm going to be leaving ½ inch in between these pieces so as to use this to join the pieces together when I'm joining. And also for this back, I'm going to be adding my zipper allowance on the main fabric when I'm cutting. So now guys, this is it. The first pieces I'm cutting are my front pieces. You can see I have ½ inch in between these, and for this center back, for this center front, I'm going to be cutting this on fold. You can see from the middle. So the same thing for the side front. You can see this edge here. I'm going to add ½ inch in between for my joining allowance. And I'm not going to add anything to this other side of the side front because I already added 1 inch when I was cutting on the pattern paper. So now guys, I'm just going to cut this out. Don't forget your center front is going to be on fold when you are cutting. So here it is guys, I'm done with cutting the front piece. Now I'm also going to cut out the back piece. So now guys, for this back piece, before you cut out the center back, make sure you leave 1½ inch for zipper allowance. So I'm going to leave half an inch from the middle for zipper allowance, and I'm going to measure half an inch at the sides for my joining allowance. I'm going to measure this half of an inch at the top of this my pattern paper and also the edge. You can see what I'm doing. So now guys, the next thing I'm going to do is to come to the waist. From the center, I'm going to come in by half of an inch and connect this down, and I'm also going to connect this back to my bust line. Now this half an inch I took at the waist is to prevent any zip bulge by the time I'm done sewing this top. So now guys, I'm just going to cut this out, and I'm going to notch my zipper allowance so I can recognize it. So now guys, the next thing I'm going to do is also do the same thing for the side backs. You can see I went ahead to add half an inch round this for my joining allowance, and I'm not going to add anything to this other side because I already did that on the main when I was cutting out the pattern. So guys, this is it. I'm done with cutting my pieces, my front pieces and also my back piece. You can see the allowances in between. Don't forget, this is very important, you know, so that it won't shorten your measurement. So now guys, for each of these pieces, I've gone ahead to cut out a lining piece. Also, this lining piece is exactly the same thing as the main fabric. So now guys, it is time to join our pieces together. I'm just going to be arranging the front pieces first. So now guys, I'm going to join the side piece to the center piece of this my front fabric. So I'm just going to be pinning this down with my office pins. I'm going to do the same thing to this other side, and I'm going to take this to the sewing machine now. Join this. You can see I'm going to join this by half of an inch. I'm going to do the same thing to this other side. So I'm just going to do the same thing for my back pieces. I'm just going to arrange them well. You can see I'm going to arrange the center back to the side back like so. I'll also go ahead to pin them down with my my office pins and sew them down with half of an inch. So yeah, it is guys, I'm done sewing this down. I've also gone ahead to iron this is my front piece and also my back piece. So now guys, I'm going to arrange my back piece to my front piece like so that I can join the shoulder. So guys, you can see this shoulder. I'm going to be joining this shoulder by half of an inch. I'll just take this to the sewing machine to do that now. So guys, you can see I've gone ahead to join my shoulders. This is what they look like. So now guys, the next thing I'm going to do is to sew down my bias on the wrong side of this fabric. I'm going to be sewing down my bias on the point where I have joinings on the front piece and the back piece. This bias is going to serve as my boning casings. So guys, here it is. You can see I've gone ahead to sew down my bias. So I went ahead to sew down my bias on both sides. You're going to sew this closely to the edges of the bias so that it can accommodate your casings later. And you can see I made this on the wrong side of this fabric. So now guys, the next thing I'm going to do is to put in my boning casings into this bias casings that I've created. So guys, when cutting your bonings, you want to make sure you don't cut the exact length of your bias so that you can have, you know, some free spaces there for when you are joining, you know, when you are joining your linings to your fabrics. So now guys, for this boning casings, you can see what I'm doing. I'm using a lighter to smoothen the edges of the boning casings so that it won't hurt by the time one puts on this top. So I'm just going to fix in my boning into the 4 boning casings I've created. So guys, this is what it looks like. I'm just doing the same process for all the 4 boning casings I've created. So don't forget, your bonings are going to be on that joinings you have on your front piece and also your back piece. So guys, I'm done fixing my bonings. I've also gone ahead to iron this. You can see the way it's looking very flat. So now I'm just going to arrange the back piece on the front piece like so. And the next thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to hold my zipper allowance. I'm going to be holding this with office pins like so. And the next thing I'm going to do is turn this to the front so I can take my measurement. So guys, on this neckline, I'm going to take my round chest measurement. So guys, you're going to measure your chest circumference, just above your bust. So I'm just going to take my chest measurement divided by 2. And the next thing I'm going to do is to mark my bust line, which is 10 inches, then my under bust, which is 13 inches, and also the waistline, which is 16. So now guys, I'll just divide my bust circumference into 2 and mark that. Then the remaining allowance here, I'm going to split it at both ends of this fabric. So I'm going to do the same thing for my under bust. I'll also go ahead to split my under bust circumference into 2 and mark that just like I did for the bust line. You can see the remaining allowance, I'm going to split it at both ends of the fabric. So now I'm going to do the same thing for my waist. I'm going to take my waist measurement and just split the remainder of the allowance at both ends. So you can see this is me marking my waist and splitting the allowance at both ends. So the next thing I'm going to do is to mark my lower belly circumference. I've explained how you can get that earlier. So now guys, I'm just going to connect all these lines together like so, and I'm going to take this to the sewing machine to sew it down at both ends. So here it is guys, you can see I've gone ahead to sew this down, and I also went ahead to trim out my the remaining allowance there so that this outfit won't look bulky by the side. So guys, everything I've done for the main fabric, I've also gone ahead to do the same thing for the lining. You can see this is the lining, so I went ahead to also take my measurement on the lining and sew them. So now guys, you can see now it is time to join the lining to the main fabric. So this is how you are going to place the lining on the fabric, right side facing right side. So guys, the first thing you want to sew here is the neckline. You want to make sure you get that perfect square neckline. So guys, this is how I'm just going to sew this. You can see me arranging both fabrics together. So you want to make sure that the lining you cut for the fabric is also the same thing, exactly how the fabric is. So guys, I'm going to be sewing this zipper area to the neck, and to this other zipper area I'm going to be sewing this down with 1/2 inch. So guys, you can see this is what it looks like. I've gone ahead to sew down the neck. You can see the good square neckline that I talked about. So I also went ahead to sew the zipper like I explained earlier. So now guys, I'm just going to notch the neck area down to the zipper area. This is so that my fabric and that neck area too can also relax. So especially this point where we have the sharp edges, around that part where we have the square shape. So guys, just want to make sure you notch everything. So now guys, next thing I'm going to do is to hem the edges of this. You can see right side facing right side still. I'm just going to go ahead now to hem that by 1/2 inch. So guys, this is it. After hemming the edge of this top, I'm just going to create notches around it just so that it can relax very well. So now guys, the next thing is to turn this over. I'm going to be turning this from the armhole. The only part we didn't join earlier is the armhole part. So guys, I'll just turn this inside out and just bring the fabric out via the armhole parts. So guys, you can see the fabric looking very big and bulky and all of that. So I'll just go ahead now to iron this down very well so that it can lay flat. So guys, I've gone ahead to iron this. You can see you want to make sure you bring out all the fabric at all the edges, so that you can iron them very well. So now guys, another thing I do that really helps my neckline to lay flat is to make use of a hemming gum. I'll just fix in hemming gum at this neck area and just iron this down so that it can help me gum both the fabric and the lining together. It can lay very flat. So guys, this is optional. If you iron your neckline very well, then you might not need to make use of a hemming gum, but I just like to use my hemming gum to just seal up everything for me. So I'm just going to put this hemming gum at this front neckline, and I also went ahead to do the same thing for the back. So now guys, the next thing now is to fix our sleeve. So the first thing I'm going to do is to measure my armhole. The armhole I'm going to be working with is 8.5, and I'll just go ahead to trim my armhole to give me that measurement. So guys, you can see this is 8.5. I'll do the same thing for the other side. So now guys, after trimming, I'll just go ahead to measure this to show you what I have. So you can see this is 8.5 exactly. So now guys, the next thing is to create our sleeves. So now guys, my armhole circumference is 17 inches. So now guys, I'll just multiply that by 2, which is 34. And now I'm gonna have to cut out this fabric. You can see I cut out 2 of these. So now for this one, for each one, the length is about, you can see the wideness is about 33 to 34 inches. This is the remainder of the fabric, and the length is 14 inches guys. My elbow length is 10 inches, so the remaining 4 inches, 3 inches is going to just to be volume for the sleeve. You know, it's an it is an exaggerated sleeve, and the remaining 1 inch is going to serve as my seam allowance. So now guys, the next thing is just to notch the middle of this fabric that I have. So now guys, from this middle, I'm going to be pleating at both edges of this fabric. You can see I've gone ahead to mark down the middle. So now guys, the next thing you're going to do is my armhole circumference is 17 inches. So now guys, on this side, I'm going to make pleats and make sure that the length here I have at the end of the day is about 8.5, you know, to 9 inches. 8.5, which is going to be my armhole circumference, and ½ inch for sewing allowance. So now guys, you can see me pinning down this with my pins. Then guys, you can see this is 9 inch. You can see this is 9 inches at one edge of this. Then I'll do the same thing for the other side. You know, I'm just going to make pleats and make sure that the pleats I have, the length here is also 9 inches, so that at the end of the day I'll have about 18 inches for this armhole part. So guys, you can see this is about 9 inches also. So guys, measuring this, you can see I have exactly 18 inches, and my armhole circumference is 17. So the remaining 1 inch will be for sewing allowance. So guys, the next thing I did was to sew down the pleats edges just to hold my pleat in place, and the other side of this fabric is going to be for my elastic casing. So I'll just fold this twice and sew this down. So guys, I'm gonna head to do that. The next thing now is to fixing my elastic. So now guys, just take your round elbow measurement. So whatever you have, you subtract about 4 inches from that. So you just cut out the length of what you get for your elastic. So guys, this is me fixing in my elastic. You can see me making use of a safety pin to fix that into the elastic casing that I've created. So once I'm done fixing in my elastic, I'm just going to sew down this part by ½ inch. So guys, this is it. You can see I am done with one part of this sleeve. This is what it looks like, exaggerated sleeve. And now guys, the next thing I'm going to do is to fix this pleated part to the armhole. So guys, I'm going to repeat this same process for the other fabric that I cut that is going to serve as my sleeve, and I'm just going to fix that also to the other armhole. So guys, this is it. I've also gone ahead to fix the other armhole, and I've gone ahead to iron both sleeves. So this is what they look like. Now guys, the last thing I'm going to do now is to fix my zipper to this back side with the zipper allowance I left earlier. So when I'm done fixing the zipper guys, I'm going to put this on so you can see how it looks like on my body. So yeah guys, this is the finished result. You can see this top looking very beautiful. What I love about this top is the square neckline and also the exaggerated sleeve. So guys, if you have any question for me, let me know down in the comment section below. Don't forget to like this video and also subscribe to my channel if you haven't. I'm going to see you all in my next video. Bye.